Hey everybody, I'm Tori Townley with Serve Day. Welcome to the Serve Brew. If it's your first time or if it's not, as you know, this is our afternoon virtual coffee break, so I hope you brought your coffee. Awesome. We're getting ready for our big Serve Day National, Serve Day 17 on July 15th. If you have not signed up, please go to serveday.today and get your dot on the map. It's going to be awesome. And in light of that, I have recently gained a new friend who is really incredible and has started some amazing ministry in the Los Angeles area. And the great Pastor Dino Rizzo has connected us, and I'm just so excited and inspired by this story and what these guys are doing. So I'm going to introduce my friend Jesse Ross, the founder of GoBethe1. Hey, Jesse. Awesome. So we're just going to get started, and if you guys have any questions about anything, you can send that to us and we'll connect later. But Jesse, I am so honored to meet you, and like I said before, Pastor Dino introduced us through a meetup, an ARC meetup, and I know that you have an incredible passion to serve the community and your city, and you've done some amazing ministry and been a lot of different places and worked really hard, and you're just seeing a lot of fruit from your effort. And I think that the church as a whole can learn a lot from you and your voice and just the passion that you have to keep it about Jesus and really do it the right way. So if you would just kind of introduce yourself. I'm trying, but you can introduce yourself better than me because we have only been friends a little while. But and tell us just kind of where you're coming from and how GoBethe1 got started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to join in on this conversation and have some Serve Brew. So thank you. Yeah, I am just thrilled. I didn't know about ARC really, and I didn't really know about you guys, about Serve Day. And so when I went to that meeting and I met Dino, I went home and immediately started researching, who this is and who you guys are. And I was blown away by seeing that organizations like ARC that are bringing churches together to help plant other churches so that there's churches just spreading across neighborhoods and cities. I think I in the past felt like churches didn't want other churches in their community, so it was kind of competitive. It was like Game of Thrones, like this is my territory. And so I just think I love some of the things that I'm seeing that's happening, that churches are doing that. So when I found you guys and Dino told me about Serve Day and Servolution and everything you guys are doing, I was really honored. So yeah, my name's Jesse Ross, and I've been a pastor most of my life. I grew up a PK, and but the last 2 years I haven't really been on staff at a church. But in many respects, I feel more like a pastor now than I did when I was on staff in some ways. And I feel more like I'm in my zone, So yeah, it's kind of the story kind of begins with me having a moment when I was on staff at a church when there was an Easter and the pastor asked everyone like, hey, be thinking of someone that's in your life that you have a relationship with that doesn't know God, and let's pray for them, and invite them. And I started thinking, and I had been on staff for about 4 or 5 years there, and I realized that I had completely lost touch with the world around me. I couldn't think of one person, and it shook my world. Like, I'm a grown man, I'm like 6'3", and I started bawling, and I couldn't even control it, and I thought, what in the heck am I doing, So that was kind of the seed that started this revolution in me. And, God called us. I never thought I would be a pastor, but we wanted to start a church in an area where there wasn't any church and where there was great need. And back in 2009, we started a church right in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. So at the time, there weren't a lot of churches at all in downtown LA. And today, in the past 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot of new churches coming in. It's awesome to see. But at the time, there wasn't. And so, yeah, we basically moved everything. I stepped off staff. We had the blessing from our pastor in the church, and we started a church right in downtown LA. But one of the key things that we did at the time was we moved into the community. That was kind of really important for us. It would have been a lot easier to live outside of downtown LA, because at the time downtown LA was experiencing like a revolution. They didn't have grocery stores, and there was a lot of things happening. And today you go there and it's really changed a lot. But it was quite an adjustment for us, going from suburbs to right into downtown. But it was a great shift for us, because for us it meant a lot to be in the community we were at. I know in some places across America, it's almost impossible to not be in the same community your church is in. But here in LA, it's so huge that most of the time, you're living somewhere else and your church is somewhere else. And we experienced that a lot, where we didn't actually really feel like we had community where we lived. So yeah, that was kind of what sparked this journey. And so I don't know if did you want me to go ahead and just like go into the stories of like what happened? Okay. So here's the main thing. So we were a church startup. We weren't a church plant. We had no money, no people, no anything. So we literally plopped into the neighborhood in an apartment and started from scratch. And one of the first things I did was, and actually I could probably write a book on what not to do when starting a church, because I didn't know about ARC. ARC would have been really awesome for me at the time. But one of the first things I did was I joined the Chamber of Commerce, and I went and started making connections with like United Way. I went to nonprofits, people who are doing things on the ground. I think one of the things is like, okay, I'm not just going to start another church that's going to be a bubble. I wanted out of that. So how do I intentionally do this? So that we didn't even have worship, we didn't have a building, but we started reaching out to our community. So we wanted to be part of the fabric. I would be on Skid Row meetings. Obviously Skid Row is like a hotbed for just tons of needs and things happening. But it was really interesting. So what happened was I would go to these things and I started, getting a sense of the community. But one of the challenges is at the time in 2009, everyone was doing their own thing and there was no unity. And, something as big as homelessness here in Los Angeles, it wasn't working. So the problem was continuing to get worse. And even though there was a lot of efforts and a lot of great things happening individually, there was never a united effort. And so it was discouraging. It took me about 1.5 years to just find out, like, what do we do? Because I was really passionate about not just doing something to do it. Like, I didn't want to just put Band-Aids on problems. And a lot of the things that we would encounter wasn't really a solution. And so there was a moment in time when I feel like God really dropped this in our lap. And I read an article, and through these relationships started hearing about this thing that the city, the Chamber of Commerce, business leaders, so every sector of communities, like business sector, private sector, the nonprofits, and they wanted to include the faith sector, was to come together and have one plan, a plan that would actually be a solution, and see if we can't just unite and get everyone moving in the same direction and really take a bite out of this elephant, And that inspired me. So we just poured ourselves into it. And it really was a real solution. I can now look back and say it's 6 years later, the amount of people through this Home for Good program that have actually moved off the streets into housing is somewhere close to like 19,000 now. I think it was literally a miracle. But here's the sad part. I remember they did this thing where they wanted everyone to sign on, and I looked at it, and I think I was the only pastor who signed on. And when they did this big announcement, like press conference, and I wasn't, like, our church was like 20 or 30 people at the time. And when they did this big press conference, I was there and I was looking around, and they kept saying the business sector, the private sector, and then the faith sector. And it was like, I was sitting in there like, who is that? Where are we? And, so I think that was another moment I really had to search, why are we missing from this equation? I think there's a lot of reasons, but a couple of them I know for sure. Like sometimes it's just our theology. Like we think that we have a corner on truth and the answers to everything. And I grew up in closely, somewhat loosely connected to like hardcore fundamental religion. And there was actually a really strong arrogance that came along with it. So they didn't actually engage their community because they are the world. They are bad. They don't have the answers. We have the answer. And so there was actually a really strong divide, a really strong wall. If you happen to come onto our turf and start to, say the things we say and look the way we do and believe what we believe, then we can talk. And so I think that is one. Secondly, I found that when I tried engaging faith communities, there's a lot of hardcore, just mainline denominational churches that are sadly kind of dying out. And so here in LA, you see this beautiful building and there's no one there. There's, on a Sunday, they'll have 12 people, and and then you try to talk to the pastor and they just don't, you'll never get to them. And so that was one of the issues. But thankfully, that's changing a lot. I think what I'm seeing, and I don't know if you guys see this where you are and people see it around the country, but this next generation of young people that are coming to our churches now, they're not content to just sit there every Sunday and then just go home like this is where I do this. They are craving to work it out somehow and make it alive outside of Sunday. And so it's really awesome. Pastors now are feeling almost not pressure, but everyone is asking them like, what can we do in our community? And every small group is like, we want to serve together. What can we do? And so, I think that's a really good thing that we're seeing taking place here. So, yeah, I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'll let you talk.
There. No, this is awesome. This is like so rich and amazing. I'm taking notes. Like I always take notes when people give out zingers. So you're doing amazing. I love just the story and like how God kind of took you on that journey of like popping the bubble and like allowing you to see and have a perspective that's of his heart. And there's been a lot of things that you've said that I just think are so refreshing. And I was going to ask your advice too. So it's beautiful how the church is kind of starting to work together more. And I think especially on the West Coast, like I see so many churches signing up from the West for Serve Day and for other things. I feel like they're popping up, and it's just beautiful to see like God is moving and doing amazing things. But with that, like as a church planner, the hard work that goes into it, and you had a different design in your heart for like an average church. Like, okay, Sunday services, yes, they're important, but the community and being outside the four walls is priority. But it's also like nowadays, it is also a big pressure. Like you have to make sure funds are coming in. You have to make sure that there's a building for people to come to and that sort of thing. But how would you, and I think GoBethe1 plays a very big part into helping pastors and churches figure out how to hear their community and be part of it. But how would you encourage them to be able to balance the two? And it shouldn't be separate things, but you know what I mean? Like there's different dimensions to it. So what would you say would be some things to like just tips on how to create that culture of being outside, but also having the inside? If that makes sense.
I think I understand. And one of the awesome things about this is that sometimes change comes from the bottom up. And so that's happening here in LA. So if you want to be a church, in my opinion, here in LA that is going to, to take care of those things that a church needs, like we need to grow, healthy things grow, right? And people need to be here. We need to meet their needs. Well, one of the biggest needs or I should say desires that people have now is to serve. So if you're not doing that, and I've been a part of places where they didn't even really make it a priority. They didn't, and I saw young people looking for it somewhere else. So in some ways, I never want to talk about this like as a church growth strategy, but if you're not providing opportunities to work out, let people like experience this faith outside of your four walls, I think that they're going to just look for it somewhere else, and which is like, to me, really awesome. It's funny because in the business world, they're even having to change how they attract top talent. So this next generation, they're not interested in the same kind of packages that would typically be in the past, like, oh, great retirement, here's some great insurance, and we'll help you move. Like, this next generation. So I was reading some articles that to get them attracted to come and work for their company, they have to offer things like, okay, what do you care about, and what do you want to see change in the world? And we will make sure that part of our package includes like donations to that, or maybe we can allow people to start something through this business where you can start to let your values be a part of what you do in your job. And because that is just like, to me, amazing. Like, people want to do something that they do with their life that matters beyond just a paycheck. And to think that, they would, these are people a lot of times who don't even know God, So I think in some ways that's inspiring to me. And I think our churches and young people, and I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's like an outreach or a serve in and of itself is offering opportunities for younger people to be able to serve. So like, whatever it is, I've talked to several church planners who, like, their church hadn't even launched yet, and they opened up some kind of serve day or whatever it was, and then people in the community heard, like, college students just wanting to do something in their area, didn't even know the Lord, but came and like got plugged into the church, and their whole life has been changed because they offered that opportunity. So I totally get what you're saying, and it's definitely true. Like, people know that making a difference and helping one another is fulfilling, and the world is on a search to be fulfilled in some way. And I think it's beautiful that finally people are starting to know, like, helping and making the world a better place is what's going to fulfill you. So I think we're heading in a great direction. There's a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of good going on. So another thing I was going to kind of go back to that you had talked about that I admire a lot is just the art of listening. So a lot of times the church, it's all good-hearted, and I know that you've talked about this before, and we want to make a difference. We want to feed the hungry and help as much as we can. But sometimes I think maybe we're quick to come with our solutions. And so I just think that you have really worked hard to perfect the art of listening to the community and to the leaders and submitting in that humility. And I know it's a conversational thing because you've got people in the church who have desires and they have passions and things they want to do. They see needs and they want to create solutions. And it's very important to allow people to have that voice, of course, but it's also important to hear the cries of what's going on in the community and know what's going to help and be efficient and be a great solution rather than hindering. So how have you navigated that process, and what would you say to people who are also looking to do the same? Some of my questions are very loaded, I'm sorry, but just go with what you got.
No, that's actually so good, and I'm glad you brought that up. Because, the posture that we took when we started the church in downtown LA, and I think it kind of blows my mind that there are some issues that communities face, and I can't imagine planning a church in Chicago with what's happening there, with how many murders there are and what's happening in those communities. And you really anybody who thinks they can just plop down in there and just kind of fix things and just know what to do, like, to me, kind of blows my mind. So when we were just you see it all around you, and you start to think, well, gosh, the only way to do this is, to have a posture of humility and to go to people in the community and start to listen. And, and I think that sadly, that's been a lost art. Relationship has to come before, all of this stuff that we try to do, before programs, and relationship has to come before strategy. And so I was blown away. So one of the things that really I wasn't expecting, being in the church world, a lot of my heroes were like, certain pastors or someone who wrote this book, and it really changed my life. And so I had these like heroes, but now I can, like, it's weird. Most of my heroes aren't even like, they're not on church staffs anywhere. They're people who are doing things in the community. Some of them are Christian, some of them aren't, but like they show me more the compassion and heart of Jesus than many people that I've done ministry with. And I mean, just relentless. One of the LAPD officers here in LA, who's a good friend of mine, he's been on Skid Row for 17 years, and his job and his life and his calling and his career and his relationship with God, there's no division. It's all the same thing. He'll walk down Skid Row, and drug dealers and people drug dealers don't. Drug dealers are the ones who are afraid of him, but like people on drugs, anybody in the community is like coming up and hugging him, and and that's kind of the opposite of the reputation sometimes that police have. And so there's people on staff at United Way that I became close friends with, and people even in the private sector, people who were running worldwide companies, but wanted to take their success and some of their passion and make a difference in the community, and what I saw them doing. And so a lot of times the answers are out there, and I truly think that if it's something that you're just doing alone, and it's a program that just exists within your church, it might be doing great things, but I still don't think there's, maybe you're tackling a problem that isn't that big, or it's just not a real solution, because I feel like the only way is to change things that are systematic, to change things that have been existing in communities for decades and sometimes longer. It has to be something that we can only do together. I mean, even large churches, and I know there's churches around this country that alone can really make a huge dent in some of the problems that we face. But imagine if, when it comes to serving, we actually brought more people together and had more, a solution-based thing that everybody can join behind. Because that's what happened here in LA. We, like you said, when we started the church, before we had a lot of the other things that you would think a church would have, like worship, we were doing things together in the community. And when I saw, and what's amazing is when people are a part of this and it's a real solution, it inspires them so much that they're begging to do it again, and it wasn't just a small few, it was contagious. And so, it started to grow, and we saw that the need was so big that immediately I knew, okay, even if our church was to grow to thousands, there's no way that in a city of millions, that we would be able to really tackle this problem. And so that's why I started GoBe. GoBe is basically, to put it in a nutshell, it's like we're outreach pastors for multiple churches. So most churches don't have the staff, the money, the time to go out and spend all that time, and someone like you might be doing, like, okay, what's happening in the community, who's doing something about it, how can we get behind it, how can we bring other people in other churches and coordinate, to really make a difference. That takes a lot of time and effort and energy. And so we've been doing that, and we don't just focus on homelessness. It can be, there's things that we're doing right now. For example, and this is, by the way, is the bigger vision behind GoBe, and it was like a huge success to us. It was like a milestone. But the mayor's office actually called us because they had a problem. And actually, LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department, called the mayor's office, and the mayor's office called us, not because we're special. It's actually because they knew that churches were responding to needs. And the reputation in LA, when I started the church, I didn't get a paycheck from the church because we had no money. So I was working with nonprofit, and my job was to actually kind of activate the faith community. And people in the city, people in the mayor's office, people all over would say, don't bother churches. They're not going to do anything. Like, don't go ask them. They're not going to respond. You won't even get past the secretary. And it was true. It was absolutely true. From 2009 to like 2013, it was like pulling teeth, you know. But like I said, there's something shifting and something changing. And now it's kind of the opposite. So for the mayor's office to call us, it was to me a huge sign of change, that wow, they're calling us because they see faith communities as not just a potential answer, but it's actually happening. So they called us and said, you know, the LAPD is starting to, instead of arresting the same homeless person on the same corner over and over, they want to help them find an apartment, but they need things for the apartment. And so we started rallying behind it. But there's other things that are happening in the city, like when the rainstorms came, they called us and they said, look, we have people living in the aqueducts that they fall asleep in the rain, it's raining all night, and they don't realize that the water's rising. So at some point, there have been tents that are swept away. And if they're in the tent, like, they're going to be dead. And so they asked the LAPD to kind of go and like tell them, you know, to move. And they were just afraid of the LAPD, right? So they're thinking like they're going to get arrested. So they would run, and then they would come back at night and sleep there. So they called us and they said, can we get churches together to take a pamphlet that says, this is why it's dangerous, and maybe we can coordinate some transportation to get them to shelters, and then we need people to run the shelters. And it was beautiful, but here's the problem. Like, we started calling people, we started like putting stuff in motion, and it just took too long and it was slow. So what we're doing right now, which is exciting to me, is we're creating this network of what we're calling Ready Response churches in LA. So that's just a working name for now. It's basically having everybody ready, so that if there was an emergency or something that happened at a scale that needed to respond quickly, that we can just send out an urgent email to this network of Ready Response churches, and we can respond immediately. If the city, if our first responders, you know, here in LA, you know, God forbid, if there's an earthquake and it, you know, cuts off a community and people get displaced, and we need people to help run community shelters, we need water, we need whatever it is, we want to be ready so that when they call, that we can, as a church whole, respond, you know. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, I don't know how it is in other communities across, you know, the United States. With I know there's some churches I've heard of. I think the church there in Alabama that I think I heard that when the hurricane hit, that they actually let them and they called them to go help, right? And so that's amazing. Like, that's the kind of change we want to see happen everywhere.
So, okay, you kind of answered this in a nutshell, and all of that is so beautiful, of just the story and how it's evolved. But if you like were to define GoBe, like, in a nutshell, I know that ending homelessness is a big part of it, and it's just kind of been something you've listened and you have formed something to respond to the needs. But like, if you had to define it, I say, hey, what is GoBe? Tell me what that is, just real quick.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If I just broke it down into three things, it's to find the needs, create solutions that are real solutions, and then just call churches, communities to action. So those are the three things. And as simple as that was to list, it's a pretty intense process. But you know, there's needs that are coming up that are beyond, like you said, homelessness, that we're doing this for right now. So what is the need? Who's doing something about it? That's, you know, getting in touch with everyone in the community, and then making sure that there's a real solution. If there's not one, how can we create one? And then we start activating churches to do it.
I love it. I love it because it's not just like this negative, here's all the problems in the world, church, what are you going to do about it? But it's actually providing a next step. Like, hey, we've done all the work in the like all the research here. It's just easy. And like you said, you're outreach pastors for multiple churches. Cause yeah, there, a lot of times it's kind of sad, but that's not the first hire is the outreach person. And so it can become an afterthought. And I know that's not ever the pastor's heart, but there's always like urgent things to take care of, and sometimes that's not the first thing. So I just think it's such a godsend that you are able to sit there and be the person to do some of the research and find the solutions and say all you have to do is show up and God's going to use it. So tell me a little bit about some of the victories that you guys have had. Like you were sharing with me some of the numbers, which I'm not even a numbers person, but it blew my mind of how you guys are really working to make a difference as far as like veterans finding homes. And you said you've had some great relationships that have been built, like with the Dream Center, with the Wagners at Oasis, and just a really beautiful thing. So tell me a little about some of the victories and what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, it's been exciting. I mean, there's a person when we started GoBe, it was me, and I knew like, okay, this is not going to work, and but we, thankfully we're able to hire someone part time, and this person, her name's Lindsay. She's just amazing, and so she's like an extension to reach out to the community. And so through the efforts in the past 2 years, we just started building relationships with churches, and next thing you know, because that worked, because it was a solution, and because we did the work to say, here's what you can do. And there's different levels of church. Some are really big, some are small, but we even walk through helping them design how to activate your community. And this was another thing for us. I'll just throw this in there. We don't ask churches for money. We don't fundraise with churches. So for me, that was always a wall. It's like, okay, another person coming here who has a nonprofit, and they're going to ask us for money. And so that I think has been a huge thing for us. It does put more stress on where money comes from, but we figured that out because we didn't want that to stop what we were doing. Our goal is, when we go to a church, we say, we're not asking you for money, we're asking you to activate your people. Here's the solution. Here's how you can help, get this out, get the word out. And especially if it's a large church, it takes coordination. But, we've been able to do this with Hillsong LA in downtown Los Angeles. There was a new building, a whole building was built for homeless veterans and families, and it had 72 units. But when it's built and finished, the units aren't furnished at all, like with basic supplies. So like you can walk into an apartment and you're like, this is awesome. And then you don't have a cup for water. You don't have a pan to cook anything. You don't have pillow. You don't have anything, and it's pretty depressing to sit in an empty apartment. Like if you go looking for apartments, I mean, that's why real estate agents will pay tons of money to like furnish the place, because it gives you this, vision. But that's what was happening. And so yeah, they made an announcement, and within 2 services on one Sunday, close to 100 welcome home kits were just taken. So like people responded so quickly. We thought it might have to be something we announced for a couple weekends, and but every church that has jumped on to do this and activated their people, it just was amazing to see the response. So yeah, so it ended up being a huge block party. We moved 72. Actually, it ended up being several. It was like 100 and something people, because there were some units that had more than one person, like a family. But yeah, it was one Saturday, and we moved 72 people into housing, and then with Oasis, they just jumped on board. They're like, yes, we want to be involved, and we moved in a whole other building that, and so it's been really neat. So, and yeah, just in the past 2 years, it's close to about 250 people that are now off the streets in permanent housing with not just the things they need, but they were able to connect with community. And that to us, we started discovering that our presence meant just as much as what we were bringing to them, and that's why we ask churches, like, don't just drop it off and ring the doorbell and run. Like this, they had community on the streets, and now they're going into an apartment alone. And so let's connect with them, you know? And so, yeah, it's been beautiful and awesome to see. And so, yeah.
So beautiful. I love that it's also providing just like a high touch opportunity to be able to have churches come together and not just like to be hands on themselves, but also to look around and realize like, oh my gosh, that church is here too, and just helping people be unified. I like that you guys are like a central kind of thing. So it's not this church is hosting it, which is not bad. I think that's beautiful and I see it all the time. But I just think it's like a refreshing way to say, hey, GoBe is not like the church who's hosting it, but we're all coming together, we're all equal. And I just think that's cool. And we were talking earlier, I see a need for it more, like as ARC grows and we start doing meetups and bringing pastors together in different communities. Even Serve Day this year, I've never seen so many requests of people just saying, like I was telling you earlier that we had our website flipped and our map was down for a little while. And I had a lot of people start asking me, where's the map? I need to know who else is in my area doing Serve Day. Like we got to get that up. So it's just really beautiful to me. Like there's a hunger for people to work together as the church. And Pastor Jonathan Wiggins at Res Church in Loveland, Colorado, they have been doing some amazing work, just getting together. Like I think they're going to get together like 100 churches this Serve Day and do some real junk in their community. And so I just think it's beautiful that that's on the rise and God is just doing such a great work to harmonize this stuff. So, but I know it takes a lot of work. So what would you say, like, not every community in the country has something like GoBe. So knowing that, what would you encourage churches if they're looking to actually make a true difference? They maybe don't have a lot of resources and manpower, but they want to be able to hear their community and put their people into action. What would you encourage them to do? Are you going to go plant more GoBes around the country, or what's the plan here?
That's incredible. Hearing stories like that are inspiring to me, and I do see that shift happening, which is so exciting that churches just aren't content to stay in a silo. I think we know that we can't, especially when the problems are around us. And sadly, there are a lot of churches that are, very territorial still. They're out there, but it's neat to see this. So yeah, I think we definitely have a vision. The vision for this is actually, it's like we feel like we're just stewards of a vision that God has actually for his church. It's when I think and I'm sitting and thinking about it, it's like my heart kind of breaks. I feel the compassion that God has for his church that I don't think he ever intended it for it to be this isolated. And, I know that it's important for each church to have its own identity. I think every pastor that is listening to this or it's out there just cringes when it's like, hey, let's come together and do this again, but what's I think needed, and this is what someone at the Dream Center said the other day, is like, I don't really think we just want to come together. We actually want to get our hands dirty together. And I think that is the focus. So it's not let's come together and pray again, which prayer is awesome. It's not just let's come together and have an ecumenical service or, a worship night. Let's serve together. Let's make a difference in our community. And I think that you can put aside, service is pretty common. It's across the board. It's, you can worship in different styles. You can have different theologies and use a different version of the Bible. But when it comes to serving people, it just requires love, And so it's something that we can unite around, and we shouldn't, there's no excuse not to. And so I would encourage churches, and this is what, we hope to, we hope see spread across everywhere, is that first of all, it is about humility and getting out there and listening to your community. Don't go out there with, the chip on your shoulder and with thinking that you have the answers. Even if you think you have the answer, it's best to go and just say, what's happening? Tell me your story. What are you guys doing? What's working? What's not working? Do you see any potential solutions? One of the things that we were doing that on an individual basis, but one of the things that we wanted to do was to just, create a space where we could come together and hear from, our public service men and women, and hear from the person at the mayor's office that has their hands and their fingers and the needs of the community, and even have churches and nonprofits and just share ask those questions, what are the needs? And obviously that might not work in every community, but I would just say, reach out to churches in your area, which for some people that might be pretty intimidating, but we just have to, it's important. So I think it's happening organically. So we want to do whatever we can to help make sure that fire keeps spreading. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does, absolutely. What you were talking about kind of sparked a thought in me. At the art conference back in April, Pastor Mekon Carter was speaking. It was doing like this panel 7 and 7, and it's like firecracker preaching. It's amazing. But he got up there and talked about how it struck me funny, but once he got preaching, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But the thing that he said was, sometimes I think the devil wants us to choose sides. And of course, like in the Bible, it talks about God doesn't want us to be lukewarm. But these days, it's very tempting to like stand on your soapbox and say, this is my cause and everyone else is an enemy to it. And he gave an illustration. He is personally biracial. So he brought up his African-American brother and a Caucasian brother and talked about how like the world is oppressing this guy and then oppressing that guy. And we're all tempted to say, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, all lives matter. And he said he's always caught in the middle because he's both. And sometimes he felt that was a curse. But then God has started to teach him it's a blessing because Jesus is stuck in the middle. Like he has one hand in heaven, one foot in hell for us on our behalf. And so all that to say, I just want to honor you and thank you because you saw and you were enlightened into the hurt of the world, but you didn't turn your back on the church because the church is being stupid sometimes and didn't answer the way that it should. But you're taking the time to catch it up and help us as the church, capital C, begin to have that perspective, because the church is the hope of the world. And if people if the ones who are enlightened just take it and run with it and say, screw you, I'm doing the right thing. We have to take time to help people understand and be that bridge. And that takes humility. And so I just want to thank you for continuing to be stuck in the middle. And I know it's hard. I deal with it sometimes, just like, why can we not love people like this? And I just want to go off and do my own thing. But then God just gently reminds me, like, hey, you had a turning point before. You used to be caught in your own bubble. So you don't get to run. Like, there's not an option for that. So I think if more people have the heart like you do, the world is going to be really set up to be a great place. So just keep doing that work, and thank you for it. So we are kind of coming to a close, but I was going to ask you if there's anything else that maybe you would want to make sure that people who are tuning in know. And then also, I always like to ask people this, but just what's like fresh in your heart? Like, what are you dreaming for? Maybe just like what's fresh? What is God just doing that's like right on the cusp? So just...
Wow, those are really great questions. I think that you just touched on some things that are just like really, stirring in my soul too. I think my wife and I, one of the best things that ever happened to us was we adopted our daughter. She's Ethiopian, and it was amazing how much, she's about 7 years old now, but you see the world differently when, we traveled to Ethiopia. We were there in her village, and obviously that was life-changing in and of itself. But then bringing her home and there's so much tension in our world with race and divide and all these things that are here. And yeah, we saw the world differently through her eyes, like just simple things like the magazines that we have in our house, and you're looking through there and it's like all, one color, and the world that we live in. And I think that true spirituality, and, I know that there's a ton of scripture that's not going to come to my mind right now, but one of the things that I would encourage and what's really inspiring me right now is to listen to voices that are on the fringes. I think that there's a person in my life that is inspiring me constantly to view the world. I was in the middle. I was in the center, on staff at churches and being a pastor and large churches, well-known churches, that are known across the world. And there's one perspective from being in the center, but then when you step out to the fringes and you see the world through the eyes of people who can't get a seat in the front because of, when you see the world through the eyes of people who aren't included and aren't accepted and who have, it's a different perspective. And sadly, a lot of times people in the church haven't ever taken the time to do that. And so their first reaction is just to judge that person, or like, well, it's their fault. Why don't they get themselves out of that mess? Why are they on the fringes? Why aren't they in the center like I am, And when you get out there, you start to see that, oh, wow, it's actually because they've been pushed to the fringes a lot of times, that they aren't allowed past that point. There's all kinds of issues that I see that that need healing. So sometimes, again, I go back to this position of humility. It's not just humility because we're trying to make someone else, there's actually a sales tactic where sometimes you make the other person feel like they're the expert, and deep down you're like, I'm the expert and I know, but I'm going to let you think that you know, and then I'm going to kind of talk about mine and we're going to come to the same conclusion. And that's not really humility, that's manipulation. And I think that if we truly put aside our prejudices, put aside our preconceived ideas of what's happening, and we go in there with a broken heart of humility, that I can't understand why this is happening, and I don't know, and I want to know, and I want to learn. That to me is the only place to start, and beautiful, beautiful things will come of that, But it's crazy because, typically we go in there like, well, I'm going to change their heart and I'm going to change their life. And I've just been, one of the people I read a lot right now is Richard Rohr, and he wrote the book Falling Upward. I would just highly recommend. It's a different way of seeing, and there are some prophetic voices in the church right now that rub some people the wrong way. But I think just allowing yourself to be uncomfortable and putting aside what you think is the way you see the world, your view, and that, I think, to me, it's happening, and I think that's exciting. But I think sometimes it's the generation that's attending, and the people who are leading still haven't done that themselves. So I know pastors that are actually annoyed by millennials and this young generation, because it's like, why don't you just shut up and attend? Like, I'm teaching every Sunday. What else do you want? And so even listening to the people in your church, I think for pastors, man, our top of our list right now should be humility and listening.
My mic won't unmute. Dang, that's deep. Wow. That is so good. And I love the concept of displacing yourself, because like you're saying, it's so easy to get stuck in the grind of it. Like ministry, it's like a train. Like once it gets going, there's so much momentum and so much you have to do to keep up with it. And I just think it's so healthy to be able to just rewind and pause and be like, let me go out to the fringes, displace myself. Jesus was in heaven. I'm sure that was like a freaking train and some momentum there. And he's like, I'm going to step out and go on earth. And he didn't come and immediately start preaching. He listened for 30 plus years of his life. And how much more should we do that? So super great wisdom in that. So Pastor Dusty, I'm going to wrap it up, but thank you so deeply much for what you're doing. And I know that God is about to do some incredible things, and just the model and the art that you have displayed is beautiful, and I can't wait to see what God does next. I think it's going to be a great year and great next few years, and the world's just getting better as we go. If people would like to connect with you, pick your brain, ask questions, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, definitely. Our website is GoBethe1.com, and that's GoBethe, and it's the number 1. So GoBethe1.com. And then sometimes if you just want to like get familiar with and see things that we've been doing, at GoBethe1 Again, that's GoBethe1. You can find us on social media, and the hashtag GoBethe1 will show you a lot of pictures. It's just a way to kind of visually see what's happening. But yeah, I would love this to me. So I want to thank you for because I didn't know this existed. So you're actually like this huge, you're spreading this conversation, and you're starting it, and you're fanning the flame. So anything I can do to be a part of that, whatever it is, a phone call, personal coffee meetup, whatever. So yeah, my contact information might be on there. You can email me at jesse@gobethe1.com, or I should just give out my phone number. I don't know if that's wise or not, but call me at 909-896-7933. Yeah, give me a call. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Super brave move right there, but Bob Goff did it in his book, so I think you're fine. YouTube can handle it. That's awesome. So cool. Well, if it's cool with you, I'm going to give a little prayer, and we'll close it out. All right, Jesus, I just thank you so very much for Jesse, God, and thank you for GoBe and just the beautiful ministry that you are doing and empowering churches through these guys. God, I thank you that you've laid something on their heart to be able to listen to the needs of the world and the cries of your people, and to be a voice for the voiceless, God, and just to do it with the utmost humility and purest of hearts, God. And I just pray that you continue to bless this, God, that you continue to empower your church, God, your body. Let us just be able to put aside all of our preconceptions, God, and things that maybe we were bubbled up in, God. I pray that you just shatter anything that is not of you inside of us, and just refresh and revolutionize your church, God, so that we can be part of making a difference in this world. I just thank you for what you're doing, Lord. I know that the world can be very dark right now when we look around, but I also thank you that the church shines the brightest in the darkest hours. And I just pray that you continue to let that ring true, and just continue to send us the right relationships, God. And I just pray that we honor you in everything, and let heaven get bigger as we go. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time on the Serve Brew. Bye.